He woke up early, even though the sky was still dark and the wind was sharp. The small room was cold, but he did not mind. He had to get ready. There was work to do, and 2 little girls waiting for breakfast. The smell of old wood and the faint smoke from the tiny stove filled the room. He rubbed his hands together and tried to shake off the sleep. The girls were already awake, as usual. They ran to him with sleepy eyes and little smiles, pressing their small faces against his chest. He held them tightly, feeling the warmth of their bodies in the cold morning. Even though they lived in a small, worn-out house and money was always tight, he had them. That was enough. They were his world. He made them breakfast with what little he had. Bread, a bit of butter, and a small jar of jam. The girls giggled when he tried to cut the bread unevenly. One of them held up a piece that was clearly bigger than the others and said, "Mine is bigger." He laughed, ruffling their hair, and said, "Sharing is caring, remember?" They argued playfully for a moment, and then happily shared the bread together. After breakfast, he helped them get ready for school. Their clothes were old, patched in places, but clean. He tied their shoelaces, adjusted scarves, and reminded them to wear their mittens. The girls were always eager to go outside, even in the biting cold. He watched them leave, holding their little hands until the school gate, then waved as they ran off with their friends. Once the girls were gone, he left for work. He had 2 jobs, one at a small factory and another doing odd jobs for neighbors. Money was never enough, but he was proud of the work he did. He always carried a small bag with a sandwich and a thermos of tea, ready to get through the long day at the factory. The work was hard. The machines roared, and the smell of oil filled the air. He moved quickly, trying to keep up. Other workers knew him as the quiet man who worked hard without complaint. He did not speak much, but his eyes showed determination. He thought about his girls often, imagining them at school, learning new things, growing a little every day. That thought kept him going even when exhaustion hit hard. During breaks, he sometimes went outside to breathe in the cold air. He walked slowly, thinking about what he could do to make life better for them. There were bills to pay, clothes to buy, and little dreams he wanted to fulfill for them. He wanted them to feel safe, to have a childhood without too many worries. The burden of responsibility was heavy, but he did not complain. The love for his daughters was stronger than any fatigue. After the factory shift ended, he hurried to his second job. He shoveled snow, fixed fences, and sometimes painted houses. People knew they could rely on him. He worked quickly, carefully, and honestly, knowing that every penny he earned would feed and clothe his girls. It was tiring, and often he went home with aching muscles and cold hands, but the thought of them smiling made every effort worth it. In the evenings, he returned home, greeted by the girls running into his arms. They talked about their day, about school, their friends, and the small adventures they had. He listened patiently, asking questions, laughing at their funny stories. Even in their small home with its creaking floors and thin walls, these moments were filled with warmth. The cold outside could never touch the love that filled the room. Sometimes he took the girls for a walk by the frozen lake near their home. It was dangerous, especially in winter, but the girls loved it. They loved the sparkling ice, the way the sun made the snow shine like diamonds. He held their hands tightly, warning them not to get too close to thin ice. They listened, though curiosity always drew them forward. He would watch them laugh and run, his heart swelling with love and fear at the same time. He knew how fragile life could be, yet he wanted them to enjoy their childhood. Nights were quiet and simple. After dinner, they gathered around a small lamp. He read stories to them, sometimes from old, worn-out books, sometimes just telling tales from his own imagination. The girls listened with wide eyes, imagining worlds far beyond their small house. Occasionally, they begged for another story, and he smiled, telling one more, even if it meant staying awake longer. He treasured these moments. They were small, yet precious. Sometimes, as he lay on the hard floor mattress, listening to the girl's soft breathing, he thought about the future. He worried about school fees, medical expenses, and everything that could go wrong. But he also dreamed. He dreamed that one day they would have a better home, warm clothes, proper meals, and opportunities to follow their passions. He promised himself that he would do whatever it took to make that dream real, no matter how impossible it seemed now. He was not just their father. He was their protector, teacher, and friend. Each day he carried the weight of their lives on his shoulders, but he did it gladly. There was no greater purpose for him than to see them safe, happy, and loved. Every little smile, every giggle, every hug was a reminder that his struggles were not in vain. The town knew him as a quiet, hard-working man. Some neighbors offered help occasionally, small gifts of food or clothes for the girls, but most of the time he managed on his own. He never asked for much, never wanted pity. He took pride in being able to provide, even in small ways, for his daughters. On weekends, when he had a little time off, he tried to make it special. Sometimes they went to the market to buy a small treat, sometimes to the park for a short walk. Even simple things were adventures for the girls, and he loved seeing the joy in their eyes. Their laughter filled the air, pushing away the cold and fatigue. For those moments, nothing else mattered in the world. One winter morning, he woke up to find the lake frozen solid. The girls were excited and begged to go play near it. He hesitated, knowing the danger, but their enthusiasm was contagious. He dressed them warmly, held their hands, and watched as they stepped cautiously onto the snowy ground. He kept close, always alert, knowing that the ice could break at any moment. But he also wanted them to feel freedom, to feel the crisp air on their faces, and the joy of running in the snow dot as he watched them. He remembered the struggles of the past years, the long nights of work, the moments when he had nothing to give, the constant worry about bills, the fear of failing them. And yet, here they were, alive, full of energy and hope. He felt a mix of pride, love, and fear. Life had been hard, but moments like this made it all worth it. The bond they shared was unbreakable, and it gave him strength. He never knew he had Dot as the day went on. He kept his eyes on them constantly. The girls played, built small snow forts, and laughed as they chased each other. He smiled, feeling warmth spread through his chest despite the cold. He knew that life was fragile, but love was stronger. It was this love that carried him through every day, every struggle, every hardship. And he promised silently to himself that nothing, not even the harshest winter, would ever take his girls away from him. The evening came quietly, and they returned home, cheeks red from the cold and eyes sparkling with excitement. He gave them a warm bath, prepared dinner, and tucked them into bed. They snuggled close, whispering little secrets and wishes. He listened, kissed their foreheads, and whispered that he loved them more than anything. In that small, simple room, surrounded by the cold walls and the warmth of their love, he felt that he could face anything. For the first time that day, he allowed himself to rest, knowing that tomorrow would bring more challenges, but also more moments like this. Moments that made every struggle worth it. The morning was bitterly cold. The sky was pale and gray, and the frozen lake glimmered under the weak winter sun. The father had prepared breakfast, and the girls were eating quickly, eager to go outside and play. Their laughter filled the small house, a sound that warmed him despite the biting wind outside. He bundled them up in thick coats, scarves, and mittens, reminding them over and over to be careful near the lake. He felt the weight of worry in his chest, but he also knew that children were drawn to adventure. He could not stop them from experiencing the world. As they stepped outside, the snow crunched under their boots. The girls ran ahead, skipping and laughing, their cheeks red from excitement. He followed closely, calling out reminders to stay away from the thin ice. The lake, partially frozen, looked beautiful and dangerous at the same time. Small patches of ice were strong, while others cracked easily under the slightest pressure. He watched his daughters play near the edge, his heart pounding with anxiety. He was distracted for only a moment when one of the girls pointed at a small, shining patch of ice in the center of the lake. They giggled and began walking toward it, their curiosity irresistible. He shouted for them to stop, but they were already too far. The ice under one of them gave a sharp crack, and his heart froze. Before he could reach them, both girls plunged into the icy water, their screams cutting through the cold air. Panic surged through him, and he ran faster than he ever had. The water was freezing, dark, and unforgiving. He could see the girls struggling, gasping for air, their tiny hands flailing. Without thinking, he dove in, the cold shocking his body, stealing his breath. The pain in his muscles and the bite of the water were unbearable, but he ignored it. All that mattered were their lives. He reached the first girl, gripping her small arm tightly and pulling her toward the edge. She cried and shivered, but he whispered softly, telling her to hold on, that he had her. Then he turned to the second girl, who was sinking under the ice, her eyes wide with fear. He reached her just in time, wrapping his arms around her and pushing upward. The ice resisted, but he forced himself to keep moving, dragging them both toward the shore. Each second felt like an eternity. His lungs burned, his fingers numb, but he refused to give up. He was their father, and no danger could stop him from saving them. Finally, they reached the bank. He pulled them onto the snow-covered ground, shivering violently. His own body was numb, but he focused on them. He stripped off their wet clothes as best he could, wrapping them in blankets he had brought. He rubbed their arms and legs, trying to restore warmth while whispering soothing words. "It's okay. You're safe now. I've got you. You're okay." Their teeth chattered, and their cries were mixed with relief and fear. He held them close, feeling their small hearts pounding against his chest. Neighbors started to appear, drawn by the commotion. Some ran to help, offering extra blankets and warm drinks. He thanked them quietly, but remained focused on the girls, his mind still racing from the terror of what had just happened. The world felt frozen, distant, as he sat there, holding them, grateful they were alive. Once the girls were stable enough, he carefully carried them home. Each step was heavy, his muscles trembling from exhaustion and cold. When they reached the warm house, he laid them on the bed, wrapping them in thick blankets and heating a small kettle of water. He checked them constantly, pressing his hand to their foreheads, watching for any sign of fever or lingering weakness. The fear of losing them had left an imprint deep in his chest, one that would not fade easily. He sat by the window, looking out at the frozen lake, feeling the weight of what could have happened. His hands still shook, not only from the cold, but from the intensity of the experience. He thought about how quickly life could change, how a moment of curiosity had almost taken away everything he loved. He knew he had to be more vigilant, but he also understood that he could not shield them from every danger. His heart ached, and yet he felt pride in his own courage, in the fact that he had not hesitated to risk everything for them. The girls eventually fell asleep, exhausted from the trauma and cold. He watched them quietly, brushing strands of hair from their faces, whispering apologies and promises to keep them safe. He could barely move without feeling the soreness in his body, but he did not care. The only thing that mattered was that they were alive, breathing, and warm. He stayed awake most of the night, sitting beside their bed, listening to their soft, steady breaths, making sure they were okay. The next day, they all went to the local clinic for a checkup. The doctor examined them carefully, confirming that they were healthy but needed rest and warmth. He listened attentively, nodding and asking questions, still haunted by the memory of the lake. The girls clung to him, their small hands holding onto his, trusting him completely. He promised them they would never go near dangerous ice again, and they nodded solemnly, understanding the seriousness in his tone. Back home, the father tried to resume normal life, but the shadow of the incident lingered. Every sound from outside, every crack in the ice, every sudden movement made his heart race. He could not stop worrying, and yet he had to continue providing, continuing his work, making sure the house stayed warm and the girls had food to eat. It was a delicate balance of fear and responsibility, but he faced it with quiet determination. In the evenings, he spent more time with the girls, telling them stories that distracted them from the fear of the previous day. He held them close, whispered words of comfort, and reassured them that they were safe. He could see the lingering anxiety in their eyes, and he wanted to replace it with laughter and joy. He taught them simple games inside the house, drew pictures with them, and made small treats to cheer them up. The bond between them grew stronger, each moment reinforcing their trust and love. Even with the crisis behind them, life remained challenging. He continued working long hours, often arriving home tired and sore. But he never complained, knowing that every effort was for his daughters. He thought about the future constantly, worried about what could happen, and tried to prepare for any dangers. The incident at the lake had taught him that life was unpredictable, and courage often meant acting without hesitation. Days passed slowly, and the memory of the frozen lake stayed fresh in their minds. The father became more protective, more watchful, and more careful. Yet he also knew that he could not live in fear forever. He wanted his daughters to grow up strong, brave, and happy without being held back by the trauma of a single moment. He taught them lessons of caution, but also of resilience, showing them that even in the face of danger, love and determination could overcome fear. One evening, after a quiet dinner, he sat with the girls near the fireplace. Their faces glowed in the warm light, and their eyes sparkled with curiosity and innocence. He thought about how fragile life could be, how quickly everything could change, and yet how precious each moment was. He held them close, feeling the pulse of their hearts against his, and whispered that no matter what happened, he would always be there for them. They smiled softly, understanding in their own way the depth of his promise. Outside, the wind howled, and snowflakes fell gently, covering the world in white. Inside, the small house was filled with warmth, love, and a renewed sense of purpose. The father knew that life would continue to challenge him, that dangers might arise again, but he also knew that his love for his daughters would always guide him. That love had saved them once, and it would continue to protect them, shape them, and inspire him every day. As night fell, he finally allowed himself to rest, sitting in a chair beside their beds. The girls were asleep, breathing softly and peacefully. The father closed his eyes for a brief moment, reflecting on the events of the past days. Fear, relief, courage, love, they were all woven together in an experience that would stay with them forever. He promised himself silently that he would keep them safe, no matter the cost, and that he would do everything in his power to give them a future filled with hope, laughter, and love. The frozen lake incident had changed them all, but it had also shown the strength of their bond, a bond that nothing could break. The days after the frozen lake incident were quiet but heavy. The girls stayed home from school for a few days, recovering from the shock and cold. Their father watched over them constantly, checking their temperature, making sure they were eating, and comforting them when they trembled. Every little cough or shiver made his heart race, and he could not rest fully until he saw them smiling again. The event had left a mark on all of them, and the father felt the weight of responsibility heavier than ever. Life carried on, but it was different. The girls were more cautious, holding tightly to his hands whenever they went outside. They asked questions, sometimes simple, sometimes deeper, about why the ice had broken and why they had almost been lost. He answered gently, without scaring them, explaining that the world could be dangerous, but that they would always face it together. He wanted them to understand, but not to fear too much. The balance was delicate, and he tried his best to manage it. Work became even more demanding. He threw himself into every task, trying to make enough money for extra blankets, warm clothes, and nutritious food. His hands were rough, his back ached constantly, but he felt that every drop of sweat and pain was a small step toward keeping his daughters safe and happy. People in the neighborhood noticed his exhaustion, but he rarely spoke of it. He had learned to carry his burdens quietly, and pride kept him going. Complaints would do nothing. Action was the only way. The house remained small, modest, and sometimes cold in the evenings. He tried to fix the drafty windows, repair the heater, and keep the floors clean and warm, but it was a constant battle. Still, he did what he could. He wanted his daughters to feel safety and comfort, even if it meant sleepless nights and endless effort. Each night, after tucking them into bed, he would sit by the window and think about what more he could do. Planning, worrying, and hoping all at once, despite the hardships. The father also tried to keep their spirits alive. He told stories, played simple games, and made small treats to bring smiles to their faces. He knew that emotional recovery was just as important as physical safety. Laughter, even in a small house with thin walls, had the power to heal. He watched the girls rediscover joy in small things. A snowflake, a funny story, or a warm cup of cocoa. Those little moments reminded him that life, though harsh, still had beauty and hope. Neighbors offered small gestures of kindness. Some brought warm clothes, others a hot meal or a blanket. He accepted quietly, always grateful, but never wanting to feel indebted. Their support was welcome, a reminder that he was not entirely alone, yet the majority of responsibility remained with him. The father's pride and sense of duty kept him focused, but he could not deny that the community's small help lightened the heavy load slightly. At the same time, he faced a quiet fear. He knew that accidents could happen any time, that life was fragile. He worried constantly, imagining scenarios where something else could go wrong. Every sound outside, every sudden noise made him tense. But he also understood that he could not live in fear forever. He had to continue working, caring, and planning for the future. Balance was hard, but necessary. The girls slowly returned to school. He walked them to the gate, holding their hands tightly, watching every step. They were nervous, glancing at the lake they had nearly drowned in, but they also wanted to live normally. Their father encouraged them, telling them it was safe now, and reminding them that he would always protect them. He knew the experience had changed them, made them a little more careful, and he accepted it as part of growing up. He still carried the memory of that day, but he refused to let fear dominate their lives. Evenings were a mix of relief and exhaustion. After dinner, he helped with homework, listened to stories from school, and tried to bring laughter back into the house. The girls needed comfort, and he needed to see them happy to feel any sense of peace. It was a delicate dance, balancing care, discipline, and warmth, but he did it naturally, guided by love and experience. They trusted him completely, and that trust fueled his determination. He also faced the reality of their financial struggles more sharply. The incident had reminded him how unprepared they were for emergencies. He had no savings, no extra resources, and only his hard work to rely on. Bills piled up, Small repairs were urgent, and every day brought new challenges. Yet he found ways to manage, stretching each penny, negotiating small deals at work, and finding creative solutions. He learned to prioritize, sometimes sacrificing his own comfort so the girls would have more. The community's respect for him quietly grew. People admired his bravery at the lake, though they rarely spoke about it directly. Some whispered about how a single father had risked everything to save his daughters. They saw him carrying on, working hard despite the trauma, caring deeply, and never asking for much in return. Though he did not notice it, the admiration of neighbors and friends became another quiet support, a sense that he was not invisible, that his actions mattered beyond his own small family. He tried to maintain small routines to bring stability. Breakfast together, school preparation, work, playtime, bedtime stories, all small anchors that reminded them that life, despite challenges, had order and predictability. The girls clung to these routines, finding comfort in familiarity. He watched their resilience grow, their smiles return gradually, and felt a mix of relief and pride. Each small recovery was a victory, a reminder that love and dedication could overcome fear and trauma. Sometimes he would sit quietly, thinking about the future. How could he protect them better? How could he give them more opportunities, a safer home, and a life free from constant worry? These questions weighed heavily, but he refused to stop. Each challenge became a motivation. The memory of that lake, of their near loss, reminded him daily of the stakes. He could not fail them, and he would not. The girls began to show signs of healing. They laughed more easily, spoke with curiosity again, and returned to small adventures, though cautiously. He encouraged them, taught them to respect dangers, and praised their bravery. In return, they brought him small moments of joy, drawing pictures, hugging him tightly, whispering "I love you" before bed. These gestures were priceless, reminders that his sacrifices were meaningful, and that their bond had deepened because of shared experience. Nighttime was still a time of vigilance. He checked on them repeatedly, ensuring they were warm and comfortable. Sleep often came fitfully, but he did not mind. His mind was always with them, assessing, planning, and worrying. The burden of responsibility was constant, yet it had become part of who he was. Courage, patience, and love defined him, and he drew strength from the very daughters he protected. The incident at the lake had changed more than their routines. It had shifted the father's perspective. He became more mindful of small dangers in everyday life, from cooking to heating, from crossing streets to playing outside. Yet he balanced caution with freedom, allowing his daughters to grow, learn, and explore. He knew that life was unpredictable, and that every day carried both risk and opportunity. His role was to guide them safely through it. Through the weeks, the father noticed small improvements. The girls' laughter returned, brighter than before. They asked to go outside, this time sticking closely to him. They shared their day at school, talked about friends, and even joked about the incident, a sign of their healing. He smiled quietly, recognizing the resilience in their spirits, and feeling a surge of hope for the days ahead. Despite everything, there were moments of quiet reflection. He thought about the fragility of life, the suddenness with which it could change, and the power of courage and love. One evening, sitting by the dim light of a lamp, he realized that his bravery had not only saved lives, but had strengthened their bond in ways he could not fully measure. The experience had left scars, but also left a foundation of trust, love, and determination that could never be broken by financial strain. Cold homes, long work days, and constant vigilance were still present. But they were no longer the only focus. Love, resilience, and hope had become the center of their lives. Each small victory, the girls' smiles, their laughter, their safety, was a reminder that he was doing the right thing. Life remained hard, but it also remained beautiful, and he clung to that beauty with everything he had got as nights passed and the cold months continued. The father and his daughters adjusted to their new reality. They moved carefully, played carefully, and lived carefully, yet their hearts were full of love and courage. He watched them grow, learned from their small moments of joy, and felt the pride of a father who had faced the worst and come through. The lake incident had tested them all, but it had also revealed the depth of their bond, their strength, and the possibility of hope, even in the hardest times, in the quiet of the evening. As the father watched his daughters drift into sleep, he promised himself again that he would protect them, guide them, and provide for them as best as he could. Life would continue to challenge him, but he knew that together they could overcome anything. The lake had been a test, a terrifying moment that could have ended tragically. Yet it had also proven something more important: love, courage, and dedication could carry them through the darkest moments and into a future where hope still shined bright. Life had returned to a cautious rhythm after the lake incident. The father had grown even more protective. The girls had regained their laughter, and the small house felt warm and safe despite the lingering cold outside. Each day he juggled work and care, managing bills, chores, and school duties. Yet the memory of the frozen lake haunted him quietly. He constantly planned, worrying about what could go wrong next, always putting the girls' safety first. One crisp morning, he went outside to fetch firewood for the stove. The girls were playing nearby, bundled up and giggling, and for a moment he felt a small, fragile peace. Then a strange sound caught his attention, an unusual hum in the air, a line of engines that sounded different from anything in the quiet town. He looked toward the road and froze. 10 vehicles, sleek, shiny, and clearly expensive, rolled slowly toward his house. Each one reflected the weak winter sun, making the snow sparkle around them. The father's heart skipped a beat. He had never seen so many luxury cars together, let alone outside his small, humble home. Confusion, fear, and curiosity mixed inside him. Why were they here? Who could possibly come with such grandeur to a place like his? The cars stopped in front of his home, engines quieting. People stepped out, dressed smartly and confidently, holding folders and gifts. They approached him with polite smiles. One of them, a kind-looking woman, spoke first, introducing herself and explaining that they had heard about his bravery, the incident at the frozen lake, and how he had risked his own life to save his daughters. She said they had been deeply moved by his courage and wanted to help. The father was speechless. He had never asked for help, never sought attention, and he certainly had not expected anything like this. He stuttered a few words, trying to thank them, but no adequate words came. The woman gently explained that the gifts they brought were meant to change their lives: reliable transportation, financial support, and other resources to make the father's daily struggles easier and to ensure the girls had a safe and stable environment. He stepped back, overwhelmed, staring at the cars lined up before him. His mind struggled to comprehend the reality. Luxury SUVs, something he had only seen on television or in magazines, now sat in front of him, ready for his family. It felt surreal. The woman smiled at his astonishment and encouraged him to see the vehicles, explaining that each one was customized to suit the family's needs, from carrying groceries and school bags to keeping the girls warm and safe. The girls ran outside, their eyes wide in amazement. They jumped from one car to another, laughing, pointing at features they had never imagined. Heated seats, large screens, spacious interiors, everything was magical to them. The father watched their joy, feeling a mixture of gratitude, disbelief, and relief. These gifts, which could easily have belonged to someone wealthy and distant, were now a part of their lives, a miraculous turn that he had never expected. The benefactors explained more. The cars came with insurance, maintenance, and fuel for a reasonable period. They also offered a monthly financial stipend to help with essential needs, ensuring that the father could focus more on his daughters rather than constant worry over bills and work. They wanted to support courage, dedication, and love, they said, rewarding not wealth or status, but heroism and selflessness. The father's hands trembled slightly as he processed it all. Tears welled in his eyes. He had worked so hard, often feeling invisible, struggling silently to provide for his daughters. And now, strangers moved by his actions and love had changed their lives in a way he could scarcely imagine. Gratitude, awe, and humility swelled inside him. He could only nod, speak simple thanks, and watch as his daughter's laughter echoed through the yard. Neighbors began to gather, drawn by the sight of the luxurious vehicles. Some whispered among themselves, amazed by the generosity and the spectacle. The father remained humble, explaining softly that it was all unexpected, that he had not sought attention. But the presence of these people, their kindness, and the visible impact on his daughters was undeniable. Even the community could see that life might be changing for the small family that had once struggled so quietly. One of the benefactors handed him a small folder with explanations, contacts, and schedules. He read it carefully, understanding that this was more than a gift. It was a commitment, a chance to step out of hardship and into stability. He could finally think beyond survival, imagining small improvements in life, education for his daughters, and the comfort of not worrying about cold nights or empty cupboards. The girls were now more curious than ever. They opened doors, pressed buttons, and discovered features they had never seen. Heated seats made them giggle, screens played small videos, and the spacious interiors became a playground of joy. Their father watched silently, heart swelling with relief and happiness. It was a moment of pure miracle life had offered them a second chance, and it was tangible, immediate, and breathtaking. Later, the benefactors stayed for tea, talking about ways to make life easier. They asked about schooling, health, and daily routines. They listened intently as he explained his challenges and hopes, offering suggestions and support. The father shared his dreams cautiously, still overwhelmed by the reality that strangers had invested in their lives not for fame, but for love and recognition of courage. It was a lesson he would never forget, that sometimes goodness and bravery could ripple outward in ways he had never imagined. As evening fell, the sun setting behind snow-covered trees, the family stood together outside. The father placed a hand on each daughter's shoulder, feeling their warmth, their excitement, and the safety that now surrounded them. The SUVs reflected the soft light, gleaming as if celebrating with them. The father's mind raced with possibilities: rides to school, trips to the doctor, even simple outings that had once seemed impossible. A future that had felt uncertain now looked bright, filled with hope and opportunity. In the following days, the family began to adjust. The father learned the features of the vehicles. The girls enjoyed the freedom and safety they offered, and the home slowly felt more secure. The financial support allowed him to buy warm clothes, better food, and small comforts that had been impossible before. He could rest a little easier, knowing that immediate survival was no longer the only concern, and that planning for a better future was now within reach. He also took time to reflect. Courage, he realized, had led to this unexpected miracle. His bravery at the lake, his willingness to risk everything for his daughters, had inspired people far beyond his small town. He understood now that acts of love, even quiet and personal, could create change and bring goodness back into life. It was a lesson in humility, gratitude, and the power of human connection. The girls thrived in ways he could not have imagined. Their laughter returned fully, their curiosity expanded, and their sense of security strengthened. They played without fear, explored without danger, and studied with focus, knowing their father had support and that life was gradually becoming safer and fuller. He watched them closely, proud and thankful, realizing that the miracle had not only changed their material life, but had lifted a heavy weight from their spirits. The benefactors checked in periodically, offering guidance and encouragement. They did not impose, but they ensured the family had the tools to maintain stability and grow. The father absorbed every lesson, every piece of advice, knowing that the generosity extended beyond material gifts. It was a chance for transformation, a rare opportunity to rise above struggle and hardship. Each visit reinforced hope, joy, and the reality that their lives were indeed changing. Over time, the father began to see the small miracles of daily life more clearly. Morning walks to school became easier. Groceries were no longer a struggle, and small adventures with his daughters were filled with comfort and safety. The SUVs became a symbol not of wealth, but of survival, courage, and the kindness of strangers moved by love. He cherished them, not for status, but for the freedom and opportunity they represented. One quiet evening, he sat by the window, watching his daughters play inside the house, warm and happy. The world outside was cold and dark, but inside there was light, laughter, and hope. He thought about how fragile life could be, how a moment of fear and danger had nearly taken everything from him, and how courage had brought unexpected joy in return. Tears welled in his eyes, not of sadness, but of profound gratitude. He promised himself silently that he would honor the gift, not waste it, and continue to protect and nurture his daughters. The miracle had arrived, but it was up to him to make it meaningful. He would work hard, teach his daughters well, and ensure that the generosity extended to them would create ripples for others in the future. The lesson was clear. Courage, love, and selflessness could inspire change, even when life seemed darkest. The SUVs remained parked outside, gleaming under the winter sky, a symbol of hope and opportunity. The father walked past them, holding his daughters' hands, feeling the warmth of their trust, love, and joy. The world had offered them a chance, a tangible miracle born from compassion and bravery. And he, a struggling single father, felt that for the first time in years he could breathe, knowing that his daughters were safe, loved, and supported in ways he had only dreamed of. Life after the arrival of the luxury SUVs and support from the benefactors felt like a dream slowly becoming real. The father woke every morning with a lighter heart, no longer crushed by constant worry about how he would provide for his daughters. The small house remained humble, but the warmth and comfort inside had improved. Every morning, the girls would run down the stairs, excited to get into one of the SUVs for school or errands, their laughter ringing through the rooms and lifting his spirits. He had more time to focus on his daughters, not because the struggles disappeared, but because the burden had eased. No longer weighed down by financial pressure, he could spend his energy teaching them, playing with them, and guiding them through life's lessons. They began to grow in confidence, learning that while life could be dangerous, it could also be full of kindness and opportunity. The father felt a deep sense of relief, knowing that the near tragedy at the frozen lake no longer overshadowed every day that he enrolled the girls in new activities, something he had never considered before because of time and money constraints. Music classes, art, and sports became part of their routine. The girls thrived, discovering talents and joy in new things. The father watched with pride, smiling at the spark of creativity in their eyes, knowing that this was a life he had only dreamed of providing. Their smiles became brighter, their laughter fuller, and the house was filled with energy and hope. The father also began to take care of himself in ways he had neglected for years. He bought warm clothes, proper shoes for winter, and even a small gym membership to keep his body strong. He realized that to care for his daughters fully, he needed to be strong, healthy, and present. Slowly, he felt the weariness from years of struggle begin to lift. The physical and emotional scars of the frozen lake incident were still there, but now softened by relief and the knowledge that he had support and hope. The benefactors continued their guidance, checking in to ensure the family was thriving. They encouraged the father to plan for the future, to save, and to invest in his daughter's education and well-being. They were not controlling or demanding. Instead, they were mentors, providing wisdom and tools that had once been completely out of reach. The father took their advice seriously, seeing the tangible benefits of careful planning and preparation. Slowly, he began to dream bigger, thinking about what the future could hold for his family. The girls, fully aware of the miracle that had touched their lives, grew in empathy and gratitude. They learned to appreciate not just what they had, but the sacrifices their father had made to keep them safe. They asked questions, wanting to understand why people had helped them, and he explained gently that bravery and love could inspire kindness in others. These lessons became part of their character, shaping them into compassionate, strong, and thoughtful young children. The father also strengthened his connection with the community. Neighbors who had once admired him from afar now saw the tangible change in his family. They visited, shared meals, and offered small gestures of friendship and support. The father realized that life was not only about survival, but also about connection. Courage had drawn help from strangers, and now kindness and community brought a sense of belonging and security that had been missing for years. With financial stability improving, the father decided to invest in the house. He fixed the drafty windows, repaired the roof, and made the living spaces more comfortable. He did not seek extravagance, but focused on warmth, safety, and a nurturing environment for his daughters. The small home felt like a real sanctuary now, a place where love and laughter were stronger than any hardship. School became a place of excitement rather than anxiety. The girls, no longer worried about the cold ride or missing meals, could focus on learning. Their teachers noticed the change, commenting on their confidence, curiosity, and engagement in class. The father took pride in seeing them flourish academically, knowing that this stability and opportunity were possible because of his courage and the kindness of others. Evenings became a cherished time. They would sit together by the fireplace, telling stories, planning small family adventures, or simply enjoying quiet moments. The father taught his daughters practical life lessons like responsibility, kindness, and perseverance, while also encouraging them to dream big. He shared his own story, carefully explaining the frozen lake incident and the miracle that followed, emphasizing bravery, love, and the importance of hope. The father also began to give back in small ways. He volunteered occasionally at local shelters, shared advice with other struggling parents, and offered a helping hand to neighbors in need. He wanted to pass on the kindness that had changed his life, teaching his daughters that gratitude could be expressed through action. These small acts of generosity became a source of pride, not only for him but for the girls, who learned that helping others was a powerful way to honor the gifts they had received. Winter passed, and with it, the fear of the frozen lake incident became a distant memory. The father still carried a quiet vigilance, but it was balanced now with hope and confidence. The girls continued to grow, their laughter and curiosity filling the house with joy. Each day became a small victory, a proof that life could change for the better, sometimes in unexpected and miraculous ways. Spring arrived, bringing new energy and color to their surroundings. The father took the girls on small trips, exploring parks, nearby forests, and local landmarks. They rode in the SUVs, comfortable and safe, and discovered the beauty of the world around them. The father watched them marvel at simple things: a blooming flower, a bird's song, the warmth of the sun, and felt a deep sense of gratitude. Life, once harsh and uncertain, now held moments of wonder and delight. The father also focused on his own dreams, long put aside. He explored ways to further stabilize their lives, considering better job opportunities, education, and long-term plans for security. The financial support and the stability provided by the benefactors allowed him to look beyond survival and toward a future filled with possibility. He made lists, set goals, and carefully planned each step, knowing that his courage had opened doors that had once seemed closed forever. The girls, inspired by their father's dedication and the miraculous support they had received, began to dream themselves. They spoke of future ambitions, learning new skills, exploring the world, and helping others. The father encouraged them, showing them that determination, bravery, and love could lead to extraordinary outcomes. Their conversations became filled with hope, creativity, and the belief that their lives were not limited by circumstance. The neighborhood took notice of the family's transformation. What had once been a struggling single father with small daughters became a story of courage, love, and change. People admired not just the miracle, but the way the family adapted, thrived, and shared their newfound blessings. The father remained humble, quietly proud, and deeply grateful, knowing that while the miracle had provided opportunity, it was up to him and his daughters to make the most of it. The father often reflected on the frozen lake, the moment that had nearly ended everything. He realized that the fear and danger of that day had forged strength, awareness, and an unbreakable bond with his daughters. That experience, terrifying as it was, had prepared them for the miracles that followed. Courage and love, he understood, were not only acts, but seeds that could grow into something extraordinary. As the girls grew older, their education, confidence, and creativity flourished. The father continued to nurture them, ensuring that every lesson of love, courage, and resilience remained alive. He shared stories of bravery, discussed ethical choices, and encouraged them to pursue their dreams without fear. The lessons of their near tragedy and miraculous support became an integral part of their lives, shaping their values and character. The family's bond grew stronger every day. Even the small disagreements, everyday challenges, and minor frustrations were tempered by love and respect. The father knew that happiness was not the absence of hardship, but the ability to overcome it together. Each evening, when the girls fell asleep peacefully, he would sit quietly, reflecting on the journey from fear and struggle to hope and stability. The miracle of the SUVs and support had not solved all problems, but it had changed the trajectory of their lives. The father could now dream bigger, plan further, and provide opportunities he had never imagined. He felt empowered, no longer trapped by circumstance, and determined to make life meaningful for his daughters. They had faced danger, experienced fear, and received unexpected kindness, and they had learned the power of courage, love, and gratitude. One quiet night, the father watched the stars with his daughters from the porch. They asked about the universe, about possibilities, and about miracles. He explained gently that life could be full of surprises, both frightening and wonderful, and that the key was to face each moment with courage and an open heart. The girls listened, absorbing every word, their eyes wide with wonder and understanding. In those moments, the father felt complete. The struggle, the fear, the miracle, and the love all converged into a single truth. Life was fragile, but love and courage could protect, heal, and transform. The family had emerged stronger, closer, and more resilient than ever. Each day was now filled with promise, hope, and the certainty that no matter what challenges lay ahead, they would face them together with strength, love, and unwavering courage. The future stretched ahead, full of unknowns, yet the father no longer feared it. He knew that the love between him and his daughters, the bond forged in danger and strengthened by miracles, would guide them through everything. The frozen lake incident had been terrifying, but it had revealed the depth of their strength and the extraordinary power of courage and love. With the support of kind strangers, the warmth of community, and the unwavering trust of his daughters, he felt ready to embrace Elle